I've been seeing these mini books everywhere, and I'm going to show you how to make one using various materials you may have on hand. First, we're going to start with the easiest material, which happens to be this foam. It's cheap and found almost everywhere. You could also use a recycled leather like this stiffer one, or even a soft buttery leather works well too. Another type of material you could use would be a thinner fake leather. You are going to need an awl or needle to poke holes through this material. And you're also going to need some scissors or a paper cutter or an X-Acto blade and a hard-edged ruler along with a mat to protect your workspace. You can use a heavier 98-pound paper or a regular printer paper in 24 or 32 pounds. Cardstock is optional, but it is in the original. All sizes are A4 or 8.5 by 11 for the paper, and you'll need some beads and elastic cord. I have an alternative version using just a tie, so you could use a cord instead of elastic. This is part 2 of making a mini book, and we're going to start with the paper book that goes inside. The original book is 16 pages surrounded by cardstock and 32-pound paper. You can use a heavier 98-pound paper, but will only need 8 to 10 pages instead of the 16. Our measurements are about 2 5/16 inches or 2 1/4 plus 1 line or 6 centimeters. The height is 1 7/8 of an inch or 1 3/4 plus 2 or 5.8 centimeters. We're going to start by measuring out our cardstock and then cutting it. You don't have to use cardstock to cover your books. You can just leave them plain. I find that the cardstock does add extra structure for the thinner papers. You can get exactly 16 sheets for each little paper book by using the following grid right here. Pause. By using this grid, you will get exactly the number you need for just one book from one sheet of paper. You don't need to use a paper cutter. A pair of scissors will do perfectly fine. An X-Acto blade also works really well. Once you're done, you're going to add everything together and staple it directly in the middle about 1 1/8 of an inch or 2.8 centimeters from the edge. I used a regular stapler for this, and if you find that yours doesn't work, just take a piece of paper out and try again. I rounded the corners with a pair of scissors. My corner rounder punch was not the right size, but it's fine. I ended up with the perfect little book, and we're going to move on to the next step, which is the fabric covers. This is part 3 of making a mini book, and we are going to be looking at the book cover. The width of the book is 2 5/8 of an inch or 6.7 centimeters. I mark it out on my ruler so I can't mess it up, but that doesn't really help me later anyway. The height is 1 7/8 of an inch or 4.7 centimeters. I use a Pilot Friction fine liner pen to mark my fabric because I can always use heat to make the lines disappear. As you can see, I end up making a mistake anyway, so I fix it and cut it out with a pair of sharp fabric-only scissors and round out the edges. In order to mark where I'm going to be poking out the holes, I find the center by folding it twice and marking it out. You can use an awl, an X-Acto blade, or a needle to puncture the fabric. I've used in the past a pick for getting nuts out of the shell, and basically you just need something sharp and sturdy in order to get through the fabric. The only material you need to be more gentle with is the foam. It tears easily, but it also punctures easily as well. If you have a leather hole punch, I would recommend using that over the awl, as I had to go over the holes that I had punched through a couple times before I was able to get the elastic to go through easily. An X-Acto blade would also work well on the leather. We are on part 4 of making a mini book, and I'm going to show you how to bind the cover using elastic and beads. You'll need an elastic cord around 10 inches or 25.5 centimeters. Make sure you pause here to see the order that we'll be threading the elastic. My elastic was too thick in order to go through a tapestry needle, so I ended up having to poke it through the holes using my awl. You're going to go through the middle and leave a tail behind and go into number 2 and then 3. You're going to be on the inside by then, and you're going to go all the way down to number 4. And you'll be on the outside again, poke it into number 5, and then you'll be on the inside, and then you're going to go through the middle hole again, leaving both your tails on the outside edge. From here, you're going to adjust the elastic tension to make sure the book isn't too loose. Close the book, and using the ends of the elastic, tie a knot where it feels tight enough that the cover will stay shut. I trim the edges of the elastic and thread some dollar store glow-in-the-dark pony beads on. I tied the bottom bead and then thread the elastic into the second bead and glued it down. You can use an Elmer's glue, but I chose super glue because it dries faster. Next, I will show you how to bind it using a cord instead of elastic. This is part 5 of my series of making a mini journal, and this is the alternative version. Instead of using elastic, we're going to be using string that ties around the book. You can use whatever kind of string or cord you have laying around. You're going to fold it in half and make sure that you wrap it around 3 to 5 times depending on the look you're going for. Make sure you have a tapestry needle that is wide enough to fit the cord. Pause here to see the threading chart. Just like before, we're going to start on the outside, the good side, and we're going to work our way in. Make sure you keep a tail so that you can adjust it later as needed. You're going to go to 2, 3, and then down to 4, and then 5, and back through the middle at number 6. Once you're finished, you can adjust to make the threads even, but you're going to probably need to adjust it again once you get the book in there. I had to tighten mine to make sure that the book wasn't so loose. And once I was done there, I wanted to make sure that the book wouldn't be sliding around too often, so I tied a knot on the outside edge. This is not necessary if you feel that your thread holds up pretty good. And then you're just going to wrap the thread on the opposite sides of each other, one going around the front, one going around the back, and tie it in a neat little bow, and you're done. We are on the last part of making a mini book, and here are some tips and tricks that might help you out. When using the foam, keep in mind that it marks up and tears easily. This can result in some cool effects or heartbreak if the cover gets torn. If you want a fun pop of color, try using embroidery floss instead of a plain cord on the tie closure. For the leather, like I said earlier in the series, you will definitely need some extra work to get the holes big enough to fit the elastic, unless you use a flat, thin elastic instead. Flat, thin elastic will fit through a tapestry needle, and that will make threading it through the leather easier. Make sure to use some fun beads to give your project a different look, and think about embroidering the cover or painting it if you want it to pop with color. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. I'm so glad you joined me on this journey. I hope you go out and make some really amazing mini books and journals. Thank you.